Yes, hello folks, welcome to the weekly Manchester United show. I'm your host as always, Phil Pratt, joined by my regular co-host here, the actor Colm on this Tuesday morning, in my time anyway, certainly out here in LA. Tuesday afternoon for you, wee man. We didn't record yesterday, but lots to talk about today, of course. How you doing?
All good, mate. Sorry we couldn't do our usual Monday. That was down to me and work commitments yesterday, so I couldn't make it. But
Yes,
yeah,
saw you
we're
by
here
Eddie
today.
Hearn yesterday,
Yeah,
getting to do an Irish accent.
here I tell you what, he done alright for an Irish accent. And you know what? He held his own against Simon
He,
Jordan today as well.
he did alright.
Um,
I didn't hear him
yeah,
against
so it
Simon
was good.
Jordan.
Good to see Katie Taylor back in Ireland as well. So
Yes, absolutely. Looking forward to that. Pity it's not against the Manchester Runner, but Chantal Cameron will be a good fight. Looking forward to that, mate. She deserves that homecoming. Obviously, let's talk about with United, of course. I'll just tweet out the link here. We'll talk a little bit about the Fulham game at the weekend, of course, international break coming up. I want to talk a little bit about the takeover and some stuff that's been going on. Obviously, there's been a lot being talked about over the last few days. Just give me a second, I'll retweet this. Okay, maybe. Because as per usual, there's certain coverage on Twitter which makes the platform utterly impossible to discuss something that's nuanced. It speaks to a bigger problem of our time where people don't read past headlines, judge an article based on the headlines, and in fact even read the headlines wrong. I'll talk a little bit about Miguel Delaney and some other journalists and my views on some of the takes on what they have been saying. I don't agree with all of them, and the people that I don't agree with know that I don't agree with because I've shared those views in private. We do it respectfully, and they have explained why I don't agree with some of it. Some of it I do agree with, some of it I don't agree with, and we'll talk a little bit about that. First of all, we'll talk about the Fulham game at the weekend, mate. Two ways to judge it: up to 70 minutes and after 70 minutes. Not gonna lie, first 70 minutes was really concerned. Not just with how flat United looked, but partly why they looked flat. One of the things that concerned me in that game was I felt like Fulham had more technical players on the ball than what United had. And what you saw early in that game was Lissandro Martinez knocking long balls and bypassing the midfield because the midfield showed no ability to link, to transition and create opportunities. I think some of that in defence of Sancho was it's hard to do that when you've got a big target man that doesn't have enormous pace, it doesn't run in behind, it doesn't create those opportunities where you're essentially looking for Rashford to create those opportunities. And when you're playing in that inverted winger role, you can get marked out of a game if you've only got to worry about one player. Weghorst drops deep, he's a big workhorse, but if you're honest, the gaps in his game would mean that when everyone's fit and on form, he can't be a starting striker. You need goals. And when I was looking at that in that Fulham game yesterday, I was thinking, no goals against Liverpool, no goals against Southampton, no goals against Fulham up to 70 minutes. And then, of course, the penalty changed everything. I have no idea why Fulham lost their mind so badly. I'm not quite sure what it was they're protesting. But that was the best gift United could have had. Changed the game, opened the game up, gave United spaces, and they were able to kill the game off. But that first 70 minutes was very concerning.
here's how I look at it. Right, I think for 70 minutes we looked like Fulham, and Fulham looked like Manchester United. I think that's the perfect way to put it, in my eyes, anyways. I think over reliance on Rashford is now shown. You've just outlined it in what you said. The lack of goals. I've been Weghorst's biggest complimenter. I've stuck up for him constantly. But there comes a point where you look at someone who's not delivering goals and you have to say that his main job should be to score goals. He's not doing it. There's an over-reliance on Rashford because of that. No one else is really chipping in. I've had a go at Anthony on social media this week, and rightfully so. A few people have come back at me with fair arguments, to be honest, and I'm one to say whenever I'm wrong, I'll hold my hands up. And I just don't know if I'm ever going to be wrong with Anthony. I think he's so one-dimensional that it inhibits the players around him. You watch every player reaction when Anthony blazes one over the bar. Watch the players around him. There's frustration amongst everyone, collective frustration. And I think it's got to the point now where we're tired, we're leggy. We've played a lot of games this season. The paper in the cracks now, we're kind of seeing that there's players who, when they're tired, they're not performing to their optimum level. There's players in this team who shouldn't really be starting week in, week out. Sancho being one of them. You've been saying for weeks, and again, he's another one I've given a bye ball to. I should probably label him in the same category as Anthony, if I'm being honest. I think both of them they're underperforming. But Anthony, I do understand some of the comments back that I've been getting on social media because I am being tough on him. But for a winger, not to have 1 assist this season. He has 5 yellow cards, no assists, 6 goals, something like that in all competitions, 27 appearances. That's not good enough. Some people have wrote back to me to say, well, 6 goals is all right. It's his debut season. He's came from the Eredivisie. He was £80 million. £80 million. He's chipped in with 6 goals. And all of them 6 goals, they're all the same type of goal. I think we're just become over-reliant on Rashford. He's not firing at the moment, and the team suffers. I think after 70 minutes, it showed how important to this team Bruno is as well. And I want to highlight that because a lot of people have criticised Bruno. Bruno, for me, has been the best signing since Sir Alex left. And people say, oh, Casemiro or Martinez. Bruno, for me, if you think about how ever-present he's been in this team since he came in, remember how good he was whenever he first joined United. Remember what he done when he first joined United. He revitalised the club, really. So I think it's really important at the moment that we'll stick by the team because it's not going the way it should be going. We've got a big couple of weeks coming up with some massive games. There's a time to be leggy and there's a time to maybe drop a few points. It was as we just have. Now's the time on the up, finish in the top 4 and get another 2 trophies.
I had to be honest, I thought when Anthony came on, and it maybe just coincided with the fact that the red card happened, the United did look a little better up front, where they looked a bit more dangerous, where they were running at pace, and Fulham where it felt like something could happen there. The thing is, you have to judge players on games, right? And after the Carabao Cup, there was a consensus, certainly a strong belief that Weghorst would be a very good backup signing. And that has to be constantly under evaluation. And I'm looking at his strengths and weaknesses, and the more you see him, the more you can evaluate those properly and going, are his strengths good enough to be a Man United player? What happens if the striker you buy in the summer gets injured? We're back to where we are with Weghorst. Is he a quality enough backup? Because to me, a striker has to score goals. Is he a quality enough backup where you're going to get goals from him? He still hasn't scored in the Premier League yet. You know, he scored in the Europa League and he scored in the League Cup. That's not good enough. That is costly in games like Southampton. And if you look at a lot of United's drop points this season, it's been in games, stupid games like that. Forget about Liverpool. I'm talking about the game against the 2 each against Leeds. United should have won that game. I'm talking about the Southampton. I'm talking about Newcastle. I'm talking about games where if you had a striker that could score goals and take chances, you win those games. And a backup, if you played for Manchester United, is it good enough to say I'm a good presser of the ball? I think you need more than that to play at Manchester United. I certainly wouldn't. It makes me wonder, United should have a better quality young striker in even the under 23s that should be able to step up. Man, that's how Rashford got his chance and take this opportunity. He brings certain qualities to the team, but there was a chance against Southampton. There was a half chance, comes across the box, he scuffs it. Chance at the weekend, cuts inside, rolls it right down the keeper's throat. It's the one thing you don't want to do. And he finishes like a central defender. He's not great in the air for someone that size. And you have to be honest, there's certain things he brings. Don't get me wrong, he works hard and all that there. That's great, right? But, there's a certain quality I think you have to play for United, and I'm not sure he has it. It's not his fault, to be fair. He's played so many games, right, that he shouldn't have been playing.
He started every game since he came in.
Yeah, the Martial situation is a total joke. a series. We'll get to this later when we talk about the Glazers, but United badly needed a striker in January, just like they did last January, right? And didn't do anything, and of course for different reasons this January, or maybe the same reasons, because they don't have the money to spend in January that they needed to save for the summer. This time slightly different in the sense that.
But this brings me back to the point that I made a few weeks ago on this about the serious lack of strength and depth. The serious lack
and that's
of
obvious
investment.
once you need to get a few injuries in key areas.
The reactivity and not proactivity from the board. I mean, how can you not sanction a striker in the past 18 months, really, when we've needed it, is beyond me.
For the same reason I'm not sanctioning the Lamborghini purchase. Because there's a lot of money.
One second. We'll reinvest it in other necessities as well. Why do we not prioritise a striker? And in order to win football matches, you need to win games. You need to score goals, right? I understand that we also needed reinforcements at the back. I understand we needed midfield reinforcements. But really, at the end of the day, this has been going on too long. This is why I think Harry Kane happens this summer. There is under no circumstances is Harry Kane staying at Spurs. That's a fact. I don't care. If he does, he's a clown.
Here's the thing about that, though. If I'm Spurs, I'd happily sell him. Right? If you come to me and say, here, give me 130 million for a player that's got 100,000 miles on the clock, because I got the best out of him, you're going to get the worst out of him. Maybe this is not Van Persie. In the last year of his contract, we were getting at a knockdown price. This is someone you're buying at a premium, right? But
he'd be worth every penny.
But would he? Because what happens if Harry Kane, gets you get a year or two out of him?
But you can say that about any player.
But not necessarily. If you get Osimhen, that's a 10-year purchase, right?
Well, okay. We would have said that about Martial. Whenever we were saying Martial, this is a 10-year purchase. This is someone who's going to
Of course, but the same rule applies to Harry Kane. Anyone can get injured. The thing is, if Osimhen gets injured, the probability he's going to get fit and resume the peak of his career in United's a lot higher than what it would be for Harry Kane. If Harry Kane gets injured, you're finished. Right?
I would say Harry Kane and Evan Ferguson, right? They're both cut from the same cloth. They're the same type of player. Evan Ferguson looks as if he could develop into a top
I love
striker.
Evan Ferguson, but the hype around him is outrageous. Right? And it's totally unfair on him. And there's a lot of Irish kids that are hyping Evan Ferguson as some type of superstar. He's shown a lot of promise, that kid, and I like him, but he's, that's
But listen, he's very similar in stature and how he controls himself and how he performs on the pitch to that of Harry Kane. If you look,
I can't say that's true. I mean, when Evan Ferguson starts hitting 30 goals a season, then I think you can make that comparison. But we're talking about an 18-year-old kid here, right?
Yeah, but nurture him
at 18 years of age.
At the highest level.
At 18 years of age, Harry Kane was on loan at Millwall, right?
This is my point, mate.
Yeah, but
we have had a serious problem at this club with strikers over the past number of years. If you nurture someone like Evan Ferguson under someone with the expertise of Harry Kane in this league, it's perfect.
Yeah, I don't know. Ask Julian Alvarez about that with Haaland. Let me ask you about. I want to mention a couple of other things. Right. Julian Alvarez scored 5 goals this season. Julian Alvarez.
He's barely got any. He's barely got any playing.
Well, so he's not being nurtured because he doesn't play. Harry Kane's going to play every week. Right?
No. But Evan
Phil Foden and De Bruyne is getting dropped. Is Foden being nurtured? Foden's getting dropped half the time. Even De Bruyne is getting dropped. Anyway, with Sancho, one of the things that frustrates me a little bit with Sancho, and it was evident again at the weekend, and we have this conversation a lot about whether he's a central player or a striker or a winger. He doesn't have a lot of pace. And so one of the things that he does a lot is he checks his run, pulls the ball back when he is level with the defender or there's ball played inside. And it's really frustrating because he doesn't have the pace to beat the defender one-on-one to get around him. And you see, I saw him do this a lot at Dortmund. So you see a lot of balls played into the channel and Sancho runs, stops, pulls the ball back and looks for that other ball inside. Now, people will say he did that for Luke Shaw, but it wasn't the same because he wasn't on a straight run down the wing. He is not a winger. I'm 100% certain of that. Right? He doesn't have the pace to be a winger. And in his defence, it's very, very hard to play. A number 10 A successful number 10 requires a successful number 9, right? Because it's all about assists, creativity. When you've got a guy up front that finishes like a centre half, then you're not getting assists. And maybe there's some mitigation there for Anthony because he's played half the season with a guy that can't finish, and the other half of the season with the striker who didn't want to be there, right? Who threw straps constantly with Ronaldo. I mean, neither of them have really played with a proper striker, and I'm quite certain that when they do, those assists will go up, and we'll see a better player. I agree that Sancho has to start stepping up and start influencing games, but I think that's really, really hard when you've got...
Well, you said you don't think he's a winger, right?
Well, he's not a winger.
So,
he's definitely not a winger.
Okay. He's not going to make it at Man United in the 10. He's certainly not going to make it as a 9. So where do you play Jadon Sancho?
Well, he might
What's
make it
the
as a
point
10.
of
I don't know.
keeping Jadon Sancho?
He might make it as a 10. I don't know. I wouldn't rate him off yet because I think he's technically very good. But I agree he needs to be better. But I think one of the things we saw with like Fred and we saw other players, when they play with players that complement their game, we see the best of these players. So I think United next season, when they have a better striker, when they have a more set team, I think when they have an alternative to Casemiro, Paulinho would have been a perfect alternative to Casemiro.
Oh, 100%.
And available at a good price too. When you see that, and when you see the weaknesses in that team being filled, then I think it's fair to say, okay, you get another year playing in this United team with a team that complements your style. I mean, if you look at Sancho with Holland, you look at Sancho play up front with Holland.
Yeah, I understand what
he was amazing.
I want to touch on this Paulinho thing because he was someone that I seen Zach Laurie, who you do the podcast with, speak very highly of last season. And I actually then started to watch a bit of Paulinho, and he looks like an absolute player at the time.
Belder.
And then he comes to the Premier League, and he is unbelievable. Really, really, really good player. Is that someone that you think we should be targeting? I mean, he's still young. He's got a really good presence in midfield. He's probably a more technical version of Scott McTominay, if I can put it that way. He's a better all-rounder than what Scott McTominay offers us. Is that something we should be looking at this summer? Because I think he's perfect alongside Casemiro to replace Casemiro. Certainly
a player like that, of that ilk, 100%. Because, I love Scott McTominay, but maybe I'm being overly harsh on him, right? But I was watching him really, really closely on Sunday. And I was watching when United were trying to play from the back, how many times he would stand in positions where he had no ability to take an outlet ball. He was like, Fulham had a defender here, and McTominay standing right behind him. And you're going, Scott, he can't pass the ball through the Fulham midfielder. You need to move into open spaces so that there is an outlet ball, and then Martinez is having to pump it long, right? Because he doesn't drop into those spaces to link. And I see many, many times when United were trying to get out from the back. Maguire, fans were getting frustrated with Maguire because of this, where that defensive midfielder wasn't showing for the ball. And he would stand in no man's land spaces where you're like, look, if we're going to transition from defensive midfield up front, that defensive midfielder has to be technical. It has to be someone that knows how to occupy spaces to get an outlet ball so that you can build. Scott McTominay is standing in spaces where you can't get the ball. Just go back and watch the first half. Watch how many times he's walking across the field, right? When United or Luke Shaw has the ball or Wan-Bissaka has the ball and they're looking inside and McTominay's walking square like this or walking away from the ball square and you're.
But I think that's something Fred does well.
Well, but the thing is, I mean, Fred is a bit different in the sense that he is someone that offers more to me than what McTominay does. He's someone that, he tracks his runners really well. He does a lot of stuff that you don't see. It was no surprise to me that McTominay got hooked after 55 minutes because it clearly wasn't working. This is a big concern for me with no Casemiro because United just don't have that player. It in some sense, you saw it against Brentford when they didn't have Casemiro. how badly United's link-up play was and how easy it was to press the midfield and win the ball because the technique wasn't just there. They tried to drop Ericsson back that day, if you remember, into that role, and they got swallowed up. That's a big concern with those 3 games, not having Casemiro, because it makes United really predictable, because what they'll start doing is they start looking down the channels for Rashford or Anthony, and becomes easy to defend against. I do worry about that, and that's where the squad, where United shows their weaknesses, why they're not a championship, why they're not a team that can win the league just yet. They have to be able to deal with those. I mean, you look at Arsenal, one of the players they signed in January was Jorginho, right? You look at the top teams, they have 2 or 3 players in that position that can do that, right? United have 1. And that's something that has to get addressed over the summer, which is partly why I think they still would like to get De Jong, because I think De Jong would be perfect for that. I think some harsh decisions are going to have to be made, quick decisions are going to have to be made on players this summer. In past seasons, players like McTominay would have got to stay. I think that Ten Hag looks at his strengths and weaknesses and goes, I can move Scott on and bring in another player that's more suited to how we play. McTominay survives a bit sometimes because of his height, right? And he's brought on as an alternative to Weghorst. But I think once you need to sign a striker in the summer, his opportunity is going to be limited. So I think I think they need to make decisions about their centre backs too. I don't think it's realistic for the likes of Victor Lindelof and Harry Maguire to stay at United playing 5-6 Premier League games a season. If one of them goes, they need to bring another centre back. We'll get into the takeover and stuff in a minute. My views.
I just want
that.
to touch on something you said there, because I agree with basically everything you said. But one thing about Maguire, and at the weekend he got unfair criticism, I think, from the fans. I think it was evident McTominay wasn't shown. There was a really tough spot where Maguire had no one to link the play, and with Maguire wanting to be a ball playing centre half, he didn't want to just knock it over because he knows he's going to get groans and he's going to get moaned at for that. So he was in a tough spot. I actually thought Maguire was good at the weekend.
But yeah,
I
thought he did all right.
To be honest.
Look, one of the things that I didn't understand is why Shaw was marking Mitrovic at corners, right? I thought Maguire did all right. I think Maguire has a similar problem to Sancho, in that when you're trying to link the next stage of play, you need to make sure you're linking with a player that's capable of coming in and receiving that ball. And I don't think Scott McTominay offers that to Harry Maguire, which makes him look worse, because now he's got to look, as you say, for long balls. He's looking for square balls. He's looking for Martinez. He's looking for an out ball. It's not there through the midfield. If you remember, I hate to bring it back to this Brentford game, but United tried to play from the back. They got caught down the middle, right, because of this problem. This is what worries me, and you can see now that teams are really pressing Fulham very, very quickly. Fulham are now pressing De Gea. Teams are. I saw this. United played. Who they played the week before? Southampton were pressing De Gea really, really quickly too. As soon as that ball goes back, makes me nervous. But that's also a problem for De Gea, because Varane's a technical defender. He's the technique. Martinez, I've said this before, is a very, very underrated footballer. But that triangle of Martinez, Varane, and Casemiro is really, really important. But when you don't have that second player to link your play to, then it can make you look really, really bad. And I think for Maguire, this is why I feel in the right team, he wouldn't be a bad player. That plays and negates his weaknesses. This is a big problem, and at this level, you look at Fulham, they have better players technically in midfield than what United did. Now Bruno Fernandes plays high, right? He plays wide. He's all over the place. It was good to see Sabitzer get a goal. I actually had a dream about it, done it before, believe it or not, which is why I said it. And good to see it was a really, really good goal too. Like I thought he took that really, really well.
He was like, I mean, you say about Bruno being everywhere. Bruno was everywhere, and I think that's a testament to Bruno and his character and everything that he does. So I think with Bruno, he's someone that he's hot or cold at points, and whenever he's cold, he gets a lot of slack from our fan base. He gets a lot of slack. You
Did you
did
hear me
it.
shouting that?
No. I could see
Okay.
it in your face, but
Okay.
you didn't. Shut up, cracker. But no, I think to be honest, there's so much that can be done with this team in the summer. I think if we're looking at it, like Saboteur's a good player, but he's not going to start every game for Man United, right? Is he going to be happy to sit on the bench? Possibly. Is someone like Maguire going to be happy to sit on the bench? Probably not. So realistically, he should move on before Lindelof because I think Lindelof's more accustomed to the bench role. So you've referred to one of the two having to go. I think
Wouldn't
out of
agree,
that list,
disagree with any of them, but
Henderson gone. I'd like to see Maguire stay, but I think he goes. McTominay, I'd like to see stay, but I think he goes. Williams definitely gone. Tatella is gone. Bailly gone. Martial gone. Alanga, I'd like to see out on loan. And Weghorst, I'd like to keep as a backup. I think Weghorst offers you something. I mean, he's not going to offer you goals, but Weghorst is going to offer you something whenever you need that type of something. 11.
I think number 11 was back in the squad as a backup striker.
We've covered this before. There's no point really getting into it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll just repeat it really quickly. But part of the problem, I think that out of necessity, simply because no one else will want to take a player that, unless you need to heavily subsidise the wages. I mean, there's just no reason to take a risk on a guy that can't stand up to the rigors of professional football. It's sad. But how could you rely on him? I mean, who would be willing to
Who are
take
you
a risk?
talking about?
Is he asking me about Martial or? Oh, sorry, I misread this. Oh, okay, sorry. Oh, okay, Greenwood. All right, yeah, no, I'm not getting into that. Yeah, I've been told certain things in private that I misread that. I've been certain things in private that is not appropriate to discuss on this. Sorry, mate, it's not right, and I won't be doing that because I'm not letting them to speculation. But I don't even know if it's correct. But we'll move on from that.
I think move on to the takeover stuff. I don't have much to give on the takeover stuff because it's basically this is your thing, Phil. And I think at points people just want to hear what you're saying. There's no point in me giving an opinion because realistically,
you can give an opinion on some of the stuff that I say because I want to hear what they have to say.
I only know what you're telling me, so we're going to be of the same opinion of it. So definitely tell what you know.
Well, here's the thing, man. It's not so much about revealing new news. It's certain things that I want to talk about. First of all, Twitter is the worst platform in the world to discuss anything that's nuanced or that requires people to think beyond their emotions. There's a really despicable element of people on Twitter that use horrible pejorative terms to describe journalists who do nothing but report what they're reliably informed. We live in an era where people don't want to be informed. They want to have their ignorance reinforced. And this is how we end up with news channels like CNN and Fox and what have you that have no journalistic integrity, that just want to fill your head full of the same shit because there's a business model to that. You are going to have to get past your feelings on this when it comes to the way this stuff gets covered, because otherwise people are going to stop covering it and they're going to stop informing you. I personally am sick and tired of being called a racist for questioning Qatar. I don't think you're a racist or you're prejudiced against Irish people because you hate me or you hate my views. I don't think they're motivated by prejudice, nor am I. I'm sick and tired of being called a Qatari cunt shill by my language for questioning Jim Ratcliffe's ethical issues, right? Friends of mine in the media have got the same allegation levelled against them. Miguel Delaney, who's been a vocal critic of City, who's been a vocal critic of Newcastle, received the same abuse from their fans over and over again, who now turns his attention to Manchester United because of the Qatari issues, and is called all sorts of horrendous names and slandered and has integrity questions, and some people should know better. I understand kids doing this, but grown adults need to catch themselves on, right? This is something that people want, in my opinion, certain, like the Qatari owners, right? If you're a grown adult with basic reasoning capabilities, then I'm going to ask you to employ them. Because here's the thing, whoever buys this football club is not going to give unlimited transfer funds. All right, this is not a computer game. You're not getting Kylian Mbappe in the summer. You're not getting any footballer you want on the planet in the summer. Right? Manchester United are still going to be banned by FFP. Right? Manchester United cannot financially dope the business. The only way they can go after a 500 million transfer budget in the same way Chelsea have, right, is financially doping, right? So if you look at United's spending over the last, 10 years, right, it's commensurate with the top football clubs in the world. The business spends money, the Glazers don't, okay? So an FFP is primarily calculated against wages. This is why City were hiding compensatory payments to people like Mancini, right? Well, they weren't hiding transfer fees. They were hiding how much they were paying, right? So even if the Qataris buy Manchester United, the idea that it's going to lead to Ten Hag being able, I'll have him, we'll 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 have him, is bullshit. It's not commensurate with reality, right? So United's spending won't be that much different to what it is right now. Now, the way they do business will change. They're not going to sit on players that are going to get contract extension after contract extension after contract extension that shouldn't be there. They'll make quick decisions on players. They'll get players out, they'll get players in. But this idea that as soon as we get to Qatar, this is why I disagree with Miguel Delaney's view that, the competitive balance of football is going to be greatly changed. City and PSG can't buy a Champions League between them, right?
It's true.
So, and the idea that all of a sudden Manchester United are going to run rampant in the transfer market is nonsense. Unless they plan on cheating, right? Unless they plan on doing what City have done. But the difference between City and United is City had to do that. City didn't have success before the Abu Dhabi bought the football club. They didn't have the revenues to justify the spending that they would need to catch top clubs. In other words, they didn't have the revenues to spend like United do right now. But now they do spend like United do right now. Right? That's the level they got to by financially doping. There is no other level beyond that. Right? So, same with PSG. Look at United spending in comparison to PSG, in comparison to City. It's almost identical. Right? Take a look at the wages. I mean, United have had one of the highest wage bills in world football for how long? Right? So, when you look at both Sir Jim Ratcliffe, whenever he wanted to buy Chelsea, said he was going to invest in a new stadium. He said the same thing about United. So both of these owners, we'll talk about both of them, if they buy the football club, have more or less promised something similar, right? For United to be able to go out and spend untold millions this summer, they're going to have to sell a lot of players, right? They're going to have to get rid of all these fringe players, right? I think that happens no matter who buys the football club, because it's going to be run like a football club. So there is no genie that's going to come out of the lamp if you get the Qataris or everybody else that's going to allow you to do things that Sir Jim Ratcliffe won't allow you to do. There is none of that, right? They have to clear the debt, right? United have a problem with Old Trafford because in 2013, basically Old Trafford, there was a ruling passed by the Manchester City Council that said if Manchester United want to sell Old Trafford, the first thing they are obligated to do is offer it to the community first, the fans first, right? It's going to affect if they want to secure equity against. So if the Glazers wanted to put Old Trafford up for equity to secure more financing, that would make it difficult, right? It's also going to affect. It would probably be. Probably not be a serious issue whenever either of these owners buy the football club, because obviously the community's not going to buy Old Trafford, right? My view is they'll stay at Old Trafford and they'll renovate it. They probably won't move, right? I expect what will happen. It's going to greatly prohibit the Glazers' ability to sell off parts of this club to get partial financing. The Glazers have been selling off parts of Manchester United for a long time, and they've taken that money out. So they've cashed in their equity. May regret doing so because it's probably worth more now than what it was in 2020 when they took out hundreds of million, put it in their own back pocket. They also have the problem of their 4 siblings that want to be bought out. They've been trying to sell partial equity in a football club to raise the money to buy them out for a long time. Go convince these 4 siblings to dilute their equity in Manchester United, which we'll get into in a second, how that gets appraised, to reinvest that money back in the football club, which they've never shown any appetite to do, right? Because this is what it would take. That money would also come with serious preconditions. No company is turning around to United and saying, here, take a few $100 million with the major changes in how this football club's being run. Notably, the dividends would change, right? And how the Glazers have Class A and Class B shares, and how the football club is run. Do they really want to be running at Old Trafford and Manchester United that's not being used as their personal ATM? And that's the only thing they ever wanted to own United for? As I said on Twitter, their metric of success is based on profit and loss. It's the only thing they care about. Now, obviously, there's some propinquity to how United play on the pitch related to revenues off the pitch. But Manchester United, and this is detailed in an Athletic article, are losing £2 million a week. That's £104 million a year, assuming that's how it scales, assuming it stays that way. Their shirt sponsor wants the bail. If they stay at this football club, they have to find a way of raising a few $100 million off. Where's the equity? What are you securing it against? When they did the leverage buyout, they secured that equity, that financing against United's assets and their revenue. What revenue can you offer now, right, that would give a return on investment for any potential investor? There's nothing left. It's
Can I ask a question here?
Go ahead, yeah.
On this, there's been rumours of a part sale or the Glazers still staying involved, or even the Glazers not selling at all. Do you think that there's a possibility that could happen?
Well, it's the difference between possibility and probability, right? So you have to look at probability. In a banking crisis right now, typically what happens is people hedge resources, especially the wealthy, right? And we know that. So risk changes. And when you look at the prospectus that the Glazers did in 2005, that they submitted to the banks about the potential risks that could be realised that would result in you not getting the return on your money, all of them have been realised. All of them. Right? It's possible we may lose to Alex Ferguson. It's possible we may not qualify for the Champions League. These things seemed ridiculous at the time. It's possible we may not be able to attract the best players in the world. It's, revenues could drop, everything. United's commercial revenue, which is the staple of the football club, hasn't grown in 5 years. For United's commercial revenue to grow, they have to have fan equity. They have no fan equity. So if they stay, their 18% that they could sell, they couldn't sell any more than 18% to keep 51% control of the football club, would be appraised completely differently because they are toxic to the brand. And if I'm going to give the Glazers 18%, if I'm going to buy 18% of the football club, okay, I'm looking at that and going, how much is my investment worth with them there? Not much. They're going to the market to ask for money, not because they want to invest in new technologies, not because they want a new stadium, because they've run this business so deplorably, it's out of cash. So that the market doesn't turn around and reward that and say, well, you know what? Here's a bunch of free money. They will if it's a highly distressed business, if they can get it at a knockdown price. But the Glazers don't want this at a knockdown price. They want it at a premium. So what's the incentive of any potential investor to say, I'm going to give you a premium where there's no potential? The Glazers can't even take out their dividends. Where's my money coming from? Where's my return on my investment coming? Right? Where is the guarantee of increased revenue growth in the near future? In order to do that, United are going to have to make sure they finish top four. They could lose at Newcastle this weekend. That top four spot becomes very, very, very dodgy. Right? There's no guarantees. And with Ten Hag being successful, it makes it even harder for the Glazers to turn around this summer and not just being successful, by the way, Colm being highly popular. Right? I mean, it was blatantly obvious with the Ronaldo situation. It's his football club, right? If you look at Ronaldo was foisted upon Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, right? Wasn't foisted upon Ten Hag, right? All of a sudden, football people making football decisions at the club, not commercial-driven decisions being made by the football club anymore. That's a whole different football club, right? So now the Glazers are going to turn around Ten Hag this summer and say, we're going to give you a parsimonious budget despite the fact you played really well and risk losing him. I don't think so, right? I mean, if you go back to, once again, bring it back to Brentford, allegedly, and I've been told this is true, a lot of the players went to the Glazers and said, you need to spend now, right? We're in serious trouble. We need to change from the Rabios and the Arnautovic's to Casemiro's and the Anthony's. And they panicked and did spend, right? Maxed out the credit card and gave Ten Hag 200 million that they weren't willing to give him prior to that game, right? Well, that's going to happen again this summer. And even if United do qualify for the Champions League, there's the added problem of the fact that now that increases wages significantly, 20 to 25%, right? That's going to distress them even more in an FFP market. Yes, they get the Adidas money, right? That gets swallowed up quickly, right? So when they didn't qualify for the Champions League, they take a drop in wages and a drop in bonuses. All of a sudden, they come back. So and when you're walking a financial tightrope, these things matter. So when you look at the Glazers' incentive to hold on to this football club, it was always based on how does this remunerate them? Well, the football club can't remunerate them anymore. It's maxed out. And to get to the next level still requires major investment. They're going to have to spend 100 million plus on a striker this summer. They couldn't fund a signing in January. Even if they wanted to throw a couple of 100 million into the football club, they still couldn't, because they can't financially dope the club. It has to be based on income, revenue, wage, and the problem is the income's now growing. The commercial revenue hasn't grown now in 5 years. So one of the things that has changed significantly from the past, from 2005 to 2010, that makes this really difficult for the Glazers. 2005, 2010, social media was in its infancy, right? Sponsors weren't accessible. So you could go to any potential sponsor and say, look, every European soccer club has some militant fans and they're not really representative. We've got 660 million fans worldwide. So your brand association with our football club is going to pay enormous dividends. That's what people are paying for, right? Well, you can't do that anymore, because as soon as United announce a commercial partner, what happens? They get slaughtered. And commercial partners, when they announce their partnership with Manchester United, they're not in the business of doing that quietly, right? The whole purpose is to grow an online brand, is to grow your brand, your image. So you have to scream that, and they're all accessible. They weren't accessible in 2010. They weren't accessible in 2005, and you could bullshit them. Not anymore. Imagine how it feels to be team viewer and have your staff abused on a daily basis from them, and this is where United support, and the number of supporters works against them, from a litany of people, a cacophony of abuse, threats, social Instagram, threats against people, Instagram abuse for executives' wives, all this, who want no part of this, right? What's their incentive? I mean, United's last two shirt sponsors, Chevy do a sponsorship with United and sack the guy the year after he does the deal. TeamViewer won out after a year. So where that impacts United is when they sit down with the next sponsor and go, hey, you want to be our shirt sponsor? Well, I haven't really seen particular value in it, right? And is this brand association positive with a football club that has no fan equity? Because that's what you're buying. You're buying, okay, I'm going to partner with your football club on the premise that your supporters are going to buy my product because they partner with your football club, right? And all of a sudden, the opposite happens, right? You get a litany of abuse. Well, we'll just go somewhere else. We'll go to Real Madrid. We'll go to some other top football club around the world where that isn't going to happen. Manchester United's strength over the last decade has been in their commercial growth, has been in their sponsors, with more sponsors than Keith Richards, right? That is finished. So now you're going, where's the opportunity for growth commercially, right? Think about sponsors losing Cristiano Ronaldo and what that does to them, right? One of the reasons I'm certain United didn't want to let him go in the summer, because I was told, and I put this on the podcast, the TeamViewer were seriously looking at that whole partnership last summer. United fans were extremely militant and they didn't see a value in it. And then all of a sudden, your biggest commercial asset wants to lead the football club. Ten Hag ain't making commercial signings, mate. Ten Hag's making football signings. this is not consistent or commensurate with how the Glazers have wanted to run this football club. The football club is leveraged to the hilt, right? It's $1 billion in debt. They don't have the revenue to pay anyone back. It needs a new stadium, right? So $1 billion in debt, circa $1.5 billion in a new stadium. It's $2.5 billion before you get started. Where's the equity? Where's the equity that the Glazers, even in a partial sale, is 18%? Let's say it's worth top end 500 million, which it's not, right? If you look at the appraisal value of Bloomberg, of United, what they say it was worth, 1.8 billion. Okay, that's a true value. Now you can get 5-6 billion when you have a bunch of buyers that want to, like Jim Ratcliffe said, how much is a house worth? It all depends on how badly you want it, right? But if you're renting someone's room, it's worth a lot less, because I got to live with you, I got to live under your rules, right? I don't have privacy, I don't have all the things that I want. Okay, if you appraise the house based on its size, and then okay, what's it? How much is this house worth to me, or how much is a room worth to me? They're two very different things, right? If I buy the house and I have the right to do whatever I want to it, whenever I want, I don't have to live under your rules, and I can invite whoever I want them. Blah blah blah. You get the analogy that I'm making. It's worth totally different, right? If I'm renting a room, then we appraise that part of your house, that land mass of your house, totally differently, because it's not the same. So you're looking at the Glazers saying, even if on the top end of an 18%, it's worth 300 million, 400 million, whatever, which it's not. So now you've got to take 300-400 million and pay down the debt. Okay? Why would the Glazers do that?
Makes no sense.
Because here's the other part of this, Colm. Let's say the financial collapse gets worse. They may never get an opportunity to sell United for this price again. That appraisal value drops. In 2010, they barely escaped the outcome of Hicks and Gillette. They refinanced in March of that year, and by the skin of their teeth, escaped that outcome. So there's enormous risk factors in keeping that business. That business, and we'll call it a business, needs major investment. It also needs completely restructuring. It has come to the end of its tenure as being run as an ATM for the Glazers, no matter what happens. Even if somehow they find an idiot willing to give them money to stay, United will never be run this way again. It can't. It's not a sustainable business model, right? So the first time they've acted like a football club in the last 10 years has been this season. And we've seen results on the field. They can never go back to doing what they did. So the question then becomes, do they want to own a football club that's not solely designed to line their pockets? I don't think so. Right? So these are basic extrapolations of logic, where you're going, they haven't ruled out staying. Well, I would say that too if I'm going to sell an asset. Right? Because the one thing you don't want to take off the table is the potential that you could keep it, that I'm not a desperate seller. I mean, this is basic, right? So, they were late to the briefing party. They were angry at Jim Ratcliffe and the statements from the Qataris about restoring the club to their former glories, and basically taking a hammer to the Glazers running the football club. Now all of a sudden they're briefing, right, about their interests, and there's other potential buyers involved. United fans should know who they are to properly vet them. Glazers won't care who they sell to. But lastly, it is entirely appropriate for people whose job it is to properly scrutinise these people and ask legitimate questions about their suitability to own the football club. Because as I've said to you, whoever buys this football club, right, it's not going to result in unlimited transfer spending. It's going to be much like it is now. There'll be quicker decisions made, you'll have sagas and all that nonsense, right? But unless you want United to emulate City and PSG and cheat, which I don't, which is not necessary, then what you see now is what you're going to get in the future. Only it's going to be a much more efficient process, and I think they'll make better decisions on who they're signing, because football decisions will be the main reason why they go after players. Not when Woodward sat down with Solskjaer, when Ronaldo was available, and sat down with Glazers and said, I can make the numbers work. Right? I can make this will be a commercial success. Right? That will no longer be the driving factor or the magic of, do we go after this player? It'll be based on football decisions. I mean, some of the stuff that Wan-Bissaka, right? We went through a list of 800 players and come up with Wan-Bissaka. Were they reading the list upside down? I mean, Jesus Christ. No disrespect to Wan-Bissaka, he's a decent defender, but he's not a footballer. And I don't believe if you go through a list of 800 right backs, you come up with Wan-Bissaka. There's clearly ridiculous reasoning why they went after players. Same with Van de Beek. Van de Beek should have been moved on 2 years ago, right? Because he occupies a really, really important position in that football club. When you need to get an injury to Eriksen, there should be someone coming into that position that's capable of playing and making a difference and playing in the United's first team, right? So to me, those are the things that will change. No matter who owns a football club, you'll see the United being run as a football club. They'll go into a new stadium, but what won't happen is this fantasy of, we're going to buy this player, buy that player, buy this player, and by the way, that's a sugar high. Okay, that wears off really, really quickly. And as we've seen before, when the Glazers tried to appease United fans with certain signings of certain calibre, of certain profiles, it doesn't last long. The season United signed Falcao and Di Maria, I was ecstatic. Right? I couldn't wait to see them in the United shirt by Christmas. Right? I wanted to throw myself off a bridge. The football was that bad. So the only way to appease fans is by making signings that make you a better football team, because one's pleasure and one's happiness, right? And I understand we live in a football manager era. We all want the best young players and the best, most exciting young players and all that. Some people are more interested in the age of a player than the actual player itself, but then they're the first person to slaughter them like they did with Garnacho. Garnacho ain't it, bruv, right? An 18-year-old kid, because this isn't a video game, this is real life, right? And it doesn't happen like this. So I want to see United run as a football club properly. I want to see the people that own the football club run it consistent with its values. I mean, take a look at PSG. PSG were knocked out of the Champions League by Bayern Munich. Kingsley Coman scored, right? All their young players, academy players, been moved on, right? They've had a serious problem getting their young academy players in the team. Kingsley Coman was a PSG academy player. Manchester United are a football club that promotes youth from within. I want to see that continue. I don't want to see that end. I don't want to see, the likes of young Garnacho being shipped out and moved on for some winger from Liga. I want to see United remain true to their values. That matters to me. It doesn't have to matter to you, and you don't have to like me for wanting that. I'm not a racist for wanting that. Jim Ratcliffe has serious ethical questions that deserve to be asked. I've said this before in the podcast that environmentalism unquestionably, overwhelmingly affects people at the very bottom more than it does at the top. It's morally reprehensible, right? Because of the impact on ecosystems, the impact on the poor, the impact on people in undeveloped countries that are unquestionably going to be migrants, that are going to be climate change migrants, that are having their country swallowed up. There's no question that's a serious ethical issue that deserves to be litigated, right? But I don't believe I'm a racist or I have Anglophobia because I want to question Jim Ratcliffe's ethics, right? You realize how absurd that is. I've been called anti-American for disliking the Glazers. Me, who lives in America with American children, anti-American. I mean, this is absurd, right? It's a way to shut down conversation. These questions need to be asked about people, and people need to deal with this with a sense of maturity. And just because you report something doesn't mean that you endorse something, okay? So when you see journalists put stuff out that is written in a particular way, doesn't mean they're advocating. Journalism is not advocacy, okay? I'm not saying some journalists don't get involved in advocacy, they do. But choose your words, be measured a little better when you're going after certain people on social media, because these are really, really important questions that United fans need answered, that United fans should be asking, and they should be asking of any potential buyer, right? What, fool me once, shame on me, fool me twice. We've already had to deal with extremely unethical human beings, and I've got no problems with whataboutery, by the way. I got no problems whatsoever with looking at people who make political contributions, may not be the ruling class of a country, but they're making political contributions to the ruling class of a country, benefiting from that, right? And those are people that are endorse illegal wars, that endorse some horrendous human rights abuses. No question. We can't have it both ways. Gary Lineker went after Qatar during the World Cup, rightfully so. As soon as he went after the UK, he was suspended. You can't have it that way. This is now the world we live in. The US is going to come under unbelievable scrutiny for hosting the World Cup and some of its social policies, and rightly so. Some of its foreign policies, and rightly so. Right? Wherever it is where I see human rights abuses, I will be a vocal critic of it, no matter who's doing it. Right? Because it's not consistent with how I believe the dignity of humanity, the agency, everything else that people should have and should never be questioned. And equality, I don't expect me to be the recipient of any right that I don't expect you to be the recipient of. And that's how people should live their life. There is no one better than anyone else. We're all the same. We're all doing the best we can. And there's no civil liberties that I should be entitled to that you shouldn't be. So that is how my moral compass is calibrated, and that's how I want to see the people that run Manchester United. And this is why I still believe Jim Ratcliffe deserves that type of scrutiny, because the inequality that's being perpetuated through his petrochemical business is not something to be ignored, you know. And like I said, one thing about the Qataris, Colm, to finish up on this, the Qataris, as I've said this before, they were one of the main financiers of the Red Knights, right? And none of this stuff was brought up then. So, and that came from Jim O'Neill himself on AntiAmerican Podcast. So, you know, we can't be hypocritical about this. I don't believe it'll result in United becoming, destroying competitive balance. And I think one thing that I would pick apart Miguel on, and I've told him this, is the comment that no success under the Qataris will matter. Because you can't say that in then Lord City. Because after every victory, every win, every trophy, you have to turn around and say this is meaningless. Right? Which I don't think it is. You know? And is it really fair to ask fans to say our institutions have let us down, our governments let us down, all the bodies that are in place to make sure football clubs aren't owned by despots failed us, but you are the one that has to make a moral choice. As we found out during COVID, football is much more than a game to people. Football is very important to people's mental health, and we make decisions every single day when it comes to our purchases and when it comes to the things that we do to separate who owns certain businesses. I'm sitting here with an iPhone. I'm well aware of the fact that Apple have exploited labour in other countries that have used slave labour essentially. Adidas, how long did it take them to sack Kanye West? You know, Nike used child labour, right? So, you know, the idea that these sponsors have a moral compass, that we aren't making decisions every single day where we're compromising values for convenience. So we're probably all hypocrites at the core, right? But sorry to dominate this, but lastly, for 17 years, Manchester United fans have been separating the ownership from what happens on the field. And when you dig deep into the Glazers' background, there's some morally reprehensible things that they've done, right? Some of the political donations to people, I'm not going to get into it, it's all there if you want to look at it. And if I'm partly funding say, Chapo Guzman, making donations to his, and I'm not saying that, I'm just making an analogy. I'm not saying that Glazers are doing that, but I'm going to make an analogy to make a point. If I'm partially funding his cartel, I don't get to turn around and say, well, hey, all those things that they're doing have nothing to do with me. Because you're clearly endorsing what they do. Clearly you've got no issue with the things that they do, whether it's for personal benefit or not. Because my values wouldn't allow that. You know, I was asked to sponsor a betting podcast, or a betting company on this podcast. They offered to give me money to advertise for them on here, and I said no. You know, I can't square that with being a mental health champion and ambassador of mental health, someone that's affiliated with a mental health charity, when I know that gambling is an addiction to many people, and I suffer from that myself, not gambling, but other addictions that I've had in my life. I've been quite open about that. Even if one person got damaged from that, I couldn't do it. It wouldn't be okay for me. So there's certain things that when values cost money, which is why I commend Gary Lineker, and it was anything but virtue signaling, which he was accused of Simon Jordan. When you're willing to pay a fiscal price or a social price to defend your values, whether you agree with them or not, that's admirable. And to me, this is something that I wish, as United fans, we would realise that it's okay for fans to want something different than you. I'm not asking you to think that way or believe that. I'm asking you to understand that lots of people have different views, and to think deeply about this, because the Glazers will not get a second chance to do this, and once we have new owners, we're stuck with them, whether it's Jim Ratcliffe Qataris or whether it's Americans or whatever. And we need to make sure these people are consistent with our values, because I'm 46 years of age, mate. Another 20 years of a similar ownership, the Glazers, puts me in my latter ages. I may not be around to see the next new owners.
I definitely don't want to be speaking to you when you're 66. Oh, well, me. You'll be 10 times worse than what you are at the minute.
I'll still be better looking than you. Nah, mate, I'm sorry to go on a rant, but to summarise it quickly, I don't see any equity left that the Glazers have to finance potential new financing to keep him at the club, or to sell a part of the football club that's worth a particular amount to new investors, and anyone that wants to buy into Manchester United is never going to let them run the football club the way they have. And I think they look at things purely from a financial perspective about what makes most financial sense for them. And to me, the most financial sense to them and the four other siblings is to cash that check now. Get that money. Liquidity is key in this market. To get 6 million in a market like this, or 6 billion, or 5-6 billion in a club that they bought with someone else's money. I mean, it's ridiculous profit, and I don't see any potential way that they can keep a hold of this football club, because it would cost them significantly more to do that, and a complete change in their business model and their personality, which, you know, they're not in that to do this. So sorry for this long rant. Yeah, poor Colm, I just done this in a 40-minute monologue. But anyway, that's my view on it, and I am extremely confident United will be sold by June, and that has to start happening, because United have to make moves in the market now, and they have to know who's writing those checks, because that's going to determine the type of player they go after. Those deals takes months. We're already in March, so Ten Hag will be putting enormous pressure on people on the inside to make this happen, so that he can get on with the summer recruitment business and players can get on with making decisions about where they're going to play next season. Sorry, man.
All right, no problem.
Do you have anything to add to it?
Nope, nothing to add, mate. You covered all bases.
Yeah, I'm going to be doing a podcast on Thursday with Kieran Maguire, where we're going to get into the financial weeds of this. So looking forward to doing that. we'll talk about the impact that the market will have on the valuation, on the potential to get financing, on what they can secure that financing against, and partial investment and all that. So you can join me on Thursday for that if you want. But anyway, thank you folks for listening. Colm, legend mate. Don't forget folks, if you're a boxing fan, check this lad out. Some fantastic content there. He works for AFL, so got some big stuff coming up. He was at the Kitty Taylor presser yesterday with Eddie Hearn, and he's really worth checking out, so give him a follow. Mate, take it easy. Have a wonderful evening. Thanks folks, see ya. Bye.